The 7-year-old girl's desperate scream echoed through the marble lobby of Harrison Dynamics. "Mr. Jake, they hurt my mommy and she won't wake up." What happened next would expose a secret so shocking that it would change everything. Because the quiet janitor she was running to wasn't who anyone thought he was. And when his hands moved with the precision of a battlefield surgeon, saving the CEO's life in ways that left paramedics speechless, one question remained. How does a man go from decorated war hero to invisible janitor? And what was he hiding from? If you want to see this incredible story unfold, smash that like button and subscribe for more amazing tales. Drop a comment below. Have you ever discovered someone had a completely different past than you imagined? 3 hours before that desperate cry for help, Jake Thompson pushed his cleaning cart through the 20th floor of Harrison Dynamics like a ghost. At 6'2" with graying temples and weathered hands, he'd perfected the art of being invisible for exactly 3 years. He arrived at 4 a.m., cleaned the executive floors while everyone slept, and disappeared before the first coffee was brewed. The wealthy executives who passed him never made eye contact. To them, he was just part of the furniture. But if they'd looked closer, they might have noticed something strange. Jake's posture was military straight, his eyes constantly scanned for threats. And beneath his gray janitor's vest was something that would have shocked them all. A black tactical harness with modular medical pouches that belonged in a war zone, not a corporate building. Jake Thompson wasn't really a janitor at all. He was Captain Jake Thompson, Army Rangers. A decorated war hero with 43 confirmed saves under fire. A man who'd walked away from everything after one mission went horribly wrong 3 years ago. 20 floors above Jake's basement supply closet, Amanda Harrison stared at her computer screen with growing horror. The numbers told a story she didn't want to believe. Someone was stealing from her company. Not just a little, $17 million, carefully siphoned through fake vendors and shell companies over 2 years. And the digital trail led to someone she trusted completely. Derek Walsh, her head of security, the man her late father had personally recommended, the person she'd relied on to protect everything she'd built. "Mommy, are you coming home soon?" 7-year-old Emma's voice made Amanda look up from the devastating evidence. Her daughter sat in the corner office, coloring at the small table Amanda had set up for nights like this. The babysitter had left an hour ago after Emma insisted she wanted to stay with her mom. "Just a little longer, sweetheart. I promise." Emma held up her drawing, a tall man in a gray uniform with kind eyes. She'd been drawing Mr. Jake a lot lately. The janitor was the only adult in the building who actually talked to her like she mattered. What Amanda didn't know was that Derek Walsh was watching her every move through the security cameras, and he'd already made a phone call that would change everything. In the basement levels, Jake was doing what he did every Thursday night, teaching basic first aid to homeless teenagers in an unused conference room. "Remember," Jake said, demonstrating on a practice dummy, "if someone's hurt badly, direct pressure first. Don't worry about being gentle. Worry about keeping them alive." 16-year-old Marcus raised his hand. "What if they're unconscious?" "Check their airway first. Make sure they can breathe. Everything else comes second." The kids hung on his every word. To them, Jake wasn't invisible. He was the man who'd taught them how to treat wounds, recognize emergencies, save lives when help was 20 minutes away. "Mr. Jake," asked Sarah, a 17-year-old living on the streets, "how do you know all this medical stuff?" Jake's hands stilled on the supplies, the question he'd been avoiding for 3 years. "I used to work in medicine," he said quietly, "before I came here." It wasn't exactly a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. The whole truth was something Jake Thompson had sworn he'd never tell anyone, because the last time he'd tried to save someone he loved, he'd failed in the worst possible way. The session ended at 9:30. Jake packed up his supplies and headed back to his cleaning duties, unaware that Derek's men had bypassed the main security system an hour earlier and were waiting in the parking garage. At 10:15 p.m., Amanda finally closed her laptop. She had everything she needed: bank records, forged signatures, email trails that led straight to Derek Walsh. Tomorrow morning, she'd present it all to the board and watch her most trusted employee get arrested. "Ready to go home, baby?" she asked Emma. Emma nodded sleepily, clutching her drawing of Mr. Jake. They took the elevator down to the parking garage, Emma's small hand warm in Amanda's as they walked toward their car. The garage was dimly lit, shadows pooling between concrete pillars. Amanda's heels clicked against the floor as she fumbled for her keys, her mind still racing with the evidence of Derek's betrayal. Amanda Harrison. The voice came from behind a van. Amanda spun around, her heart hammering, and saw two figures in ski masks stepping into the light. Where are the backup files? The voice was electronically distorted, but something about it seemed familiar. I don't know what you're talking about. Amanda's voice shook as she instinctively pushed Emma behind her. The files you've been collecting on Derek Walsh. Where are the backups? Amanda's mind raced. These weren't random attackers. They knew exactly what she'd been investigating. I don't have any files, she lied, trying to keep her voice steady for Emma's sake. The second man stepped closer, and Amanda caught a whiff of expensive cologne, the same cologne that Derek wore. Last chance, Amanda, the backup files. Where are they? Through her terror, Amanda realized something that made her stomach drop. Even with the electronic distortion, she recognized that voice. Derek? She whispered. The man in the mask went completely still. You always were too smart for your own good. What happened next was swift and terrifying. Amanda felt herself being pushed hard, heard Emma cry out in fear, and then everything went dark as she hit the concrete floor of the garage. Emma Harrison had never been so scared in her entire life. The bad men had hurt her mommy, and now her mother was lying on the ground, not moving, not answering when Emma called her name. Just then, the babysitter, Mrs. Chen, came running down the garage ramp. She'd returned to drop off Amanda's forgotten phone and had heard Emma's scream from the stairwell. Oh my God, Mrs. Chen gasped, seeing Amanda on the ground. But instead of helping, she stood frozen in shock, crying and completely useless. Emma knew she had to be brave. She had to find help. And there was only one person in the entire building she trusted completely. She ran through the parking garage, into the elevator, up to the main floor. Her heart was beating so fast it hurt, but she kept running. She had to find Mr. Jake. Emma burst through the lobby doors, her white dress wrinkled and her face streaked with tears. Late-night employees stopped and stared. The security guards started toward her, but Emma ran right past him. She saw Jake by the main entrance, emptying a trash bin. His gray uniform, his kind eyes, his gentle hands that had taught her how to tie her shoes and whistle through her fingers. Mr. Jake, she sobbed, throwing herself at him. Mr. Jake, please help. Jake dropped to one knee immediately, his weathered face becoming focused and alert in a way that would have surprised anyone who thought they knew the quiet janitor. Emma? What's wrong, sweetheart? They hurt my mommy. The words tumbled out between sobs. She's in the garage and she won't wake up and I don't know what to do and I'm scared. In that moment, something shifted in Jake Thompson's eyes. The quiet, invisible janitor disappeared. In his place was someone else entirely, someone with purpose, determination, and skills that no one in this building could have imagined. Show me where, he said, his voice carrying an authority that made nearby employees stop and stare. The elevator doors opened onto the parking garage, and Jake's mind immediately shifted into combat mode. 3 years of hiding, 3 years of pretending to be someone else, and it all disappeared in an instant. A child needed help. That was all that mattered. Jake took in the scene with the trained eye of someone who'd assessed battlefield casualties under fire. One woman down, unconscious, significant head trauma visible. One civilian in shock. Mrs. Chen standing nearby, crying and useless. No visible threats, but that could change quickly. He moved to Amanda's side with fluid efficiency, his hands already reaching for the medical kit hidden beneath his uniform. Mrs. Chen, he said, his voice carrying an authority that cut through her panic. Call 911 right now. Tell them we have an unconscious trauma patient who needs immediate medical attention. Mrs. Chen stared at him in confusion. But you're just the janitor. Make the call. Now. Something in Jake's tone made her fumble for her phone immediately. This wasn't the quiet, invisible maintenance man she'd seen around the building. This was someone else entirely. Jake knelt beside Amanda, his hands moving with clinical precision that would have shocked anyone who knew him as the humble janitor. Unconscious but breathing, that was good. Pulse weak but steady. Facial swelling, left arm clearly injured, but she was stable for now. He unzipped his gray janitor vest, revealing the black tactical harness beneath, modular, professional, and unmistakably military. Emma's eyes went wide as she saw the compact medical pouches that looked nothing like the simple first aid supplies she'd seen at school. "Emma," Jake said without looking up from her mother, "I need you to be very brave right now. Can you do that for me?" She nodded, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. "Good girl. I want you to sit right here and talk to your mom. Tell her you're here and that help is coming. Sometimes people can hear us even when they can't respond." Jake worked with the kind of efficiency that only came from saving lives under extreme pressure. He carefully positioned Amanda to keep her airway clear, checked her injuries with movements so precise they looked choreographed, and applied a cervical collar from his kit to protect her neck. Mrs. Chen had stopped crying to watch in amazement. "How do you know how to do all this?" Jake didn't answer. He was too focused on making sure Amanda was stable. But inside, memories were flooding back. Memories of other patients, other emergencies, other times when his hands had meant the difference between life and death. Emma knelt beside her mother, taking her uninjured hand. "Mommy, it's me. Mr. Jake is here, and he's taking really good care of you. The ambulance is coming and everything's going to be okay." 6 minutes later, paramedics rushed into the garage with their equipment. The lead paramedic, an experienced woman named Lisa Chen, took one look at Jake's work, and her expression changed completely. "Who provided the initial care?" she asked, her voice professional but impressed. "I did," Jake said, stepping back to give them room. Lisa knelt and quickly assessed Amanda, checking everything Jake had done. The cervical collar was perfectly positioned. Amanda was in the correct recovery position. Her injuries had been properly evaluated and stabilized. "This is textbook emergency medicine," Lisa said, looking up at Jake with obvious respect. "You probably prevented serious complications. Are you a doctor?" Jake hesitated for just a moment. "I have medical training." As they carefully loaded Amanda onto the stretcher, Lisa turned back to Jake. "Seriously, what's your background? This level of care doesn't come from a weekend first aid course. This is military-grade trauma response." "I'm just glad I could help," Jake said quietly. Detective Ray Morrison arrived just as the ambulance was pulling away. He was a veteran cop with sharp eyes who'd learned to spot when things didn't add up. "I need statements from everyone," Morrison announced, pulling out his notebook. "Starting with you, sir. Name?" "Jake Thompson. I work here in building maintenance." Morrison looked at the medical supplies still scattered around, then back at Jake. His trained eye caught details others missed: the way Jake stood, the confidence in his movements, the obvious expertise he just displayed. "Building maintenance?" Morrison repeated slowly. "And you just happen to have professional medical equipment with you?" "I believe in being prepared for emergencies." Morrison studied Jake's face. There was something about this man that didn't fit. The military bearing, the way he'd taken complete control of the situation, the obvious medical expertise that went far beyond basic first aid. "I'll need a detailed statement from you tomorrow, Mr. Thompson. This wasn't a random attack. Someone was specifically targeting Mrs. Harrison." "I understand," Jake said. "Right now, I need to make sure Emma gets home safely." But what Jake didn't know was that 20 floors above them, Derek Walsh was watching everything through the lobby and elevator security cameras. The garage feeds had been disabled during the attack, but the municipal emergency network cameras had captured Jake's heroic intervention footage Derek couldn't access or control. And what Derek was seeing on those remaining cameras made his blood run cold. Derek had been embezzling money from Harrison Dynamics for 2 years. He'd been so close to having enough to disappear forever when Amanda started asking the wrong questions. The plan had been simple: scare Amanda into backing off. But now she was in the hospital, the police were involved, and some mysterious janitor with obvious military training had saved her life. Derek picked up his secure phone and dialed a number he'd hoped never to use. "We have a problem," he said when the voice answered. "The Harrison situation didn't go as planned, and there's a complication. Someone named Jake Thompson." "What kind of complication?" "The kind that knows battlefield medicine and carries military-grade medical equipment. The kind that might start asking questions we don't want answered." There was a pause. "Handle it." Derek hung up and stared at the security footage of Jake Thompson one more time. This wasn't just some janitor who'd gotten lucky. This was someone with serious training and serious skills. At the hospital, Amanda slowly regained consciousness to the sound of machines beeping softly around her. Her head felt like it had been hit with a sledgehammer. Her left arm was immobilized in a cast, and every breath sent sharp pain through her ribs. "Mommy!" Emma's voice filled with relief and joy. Amanda turned her head carefully and saw her daughter sitting in a chair beside the bed. "Hi, baby," Amanda whispered, her throat dry and scratchy. "Are you okay?" "I'm okay. Mr. Jake saved you, Mommy. He knew exactly what to do. He had all these special medical things, and he took care of you until the ambulance came." Amanda's memory started coming back in fragments. The parking garage, the men in masks, the questions about backup files, and then that voice she'd recognized. "Derek," she whispered. Detective Morrison entered the room, his notebook already in hand. "Mrs. Harrison, I'm Detective Morrison. I need to ask you some questions about what happened tonight." "It was Derek Walsh," Amanda said immediately. "My head of security. I recognized his voice even through the electronic distortion." Morrison wrote quickly. "You're absolutely certain it was him?" "Positive. They were asking about backup files related to my investigation. Derek has been embezzling money from my company. Millions of dollars over the past 2 years." Morrison leaned forward. "We'll need to see that evidence immediately. But first, I have some questions about Jake Thompson, the man who provided your medical care." Amanda looked confused. "The janitor? What about him?" "That janitor just performed emergency medical procedures that would impress a trauma surgeon. We ran his fingerprints through our system." Morrison paused. "Captain Jake Thompson, United States Army Rangers. 3 combat tours in Afghanistan. Decorated field medic with more confirmed battlefield saves than almost anyone in his unit." Amanda stared at Morrison in complete shock. The quiet man who'd worked invisibly in her building for 3 years. The gentle person who'd befriended her daughter. He was a war hero. "I don't understand," Amanda said slowly. "Why would someone with that background be working as a janitor?" "That's exactly what I'd like to know," Morrison replied. "Because decorated war heroes don't usually end up mopping floors unless something catastrophic happened to change their lives." Meanwhile, across town in his sparse basement apartment, Jake was sitting at his small kitchen table, staring at a photograph he usually kept face down on his dresser. Sarah Thompson smiled back at him from the frame. His wife, his partner, his entire world. Sarah had been a combat nurse, working alongside him in Afghanistan. Together, they'd saved hundreds of lives, a perfect team in impossible situations. Until the day everything changed forever. Jake had been scheduled to lead a medical convoy to a remote village clinic. At the last minute, he'd been pulled into emergency surgery on a critically wounded soldier. Sarah had volunteered to take his place leading the convoy. She'd kissed him goodbye and promised to be careful. The convoy had been ambushed 15 miles from base. 12 people had lost their lives that day, including Sarah. Jake had spent the next 22 hours in surgery, saving every survivor they brought back to base. 14 people lived because of his skills that day. But he couldn't save the one person who mattered most to him in the entire world. The guilt had been overwhelming. If he hadn't been in surgery, if he'd led the convoy himself, maybe he could have spotted the ambush. Maybe he could have saved her. Maybe she'd still be alive. After that, something inside Jake had shattered completely. He'd finished his deployment in a haze of grief and self-blame, received an honorable discharge, and walked away from medicine entirely. Every time he tried to practice, he saw Sarah's face. Every patient reminded him of his failure. So he'd chosen to become invisible instead. A janitor. Someone who couldn't fail anyone important ever again. Until tonight, when a 7-year-old girl had grabbed his hand and begged him to save her mother. Jake's phone rang, interrupting his painful memories. Unknown number. "Thompson. This is Derek Walsh. I think we should have a conversation." Jake recognized the voice immediately from the security footage he'd reviewed earlier. His grip tightened on the phone. "About what?" "About the importance of staying quiet. About forgetting what you saw tonight. About remaining invisible, like you've been doing so successfully for 3 years. Jake's voice remained calm, but his military training was already assessing the threat. "That sounds like a threat, Mr. Walsh." "It's friendly advice from someone who's done his homework. You see, I know all about Captain Jake Thompson. War hero. Decorated medic. Tragic loss of his wife in Afghanistan. Man who walked away because he couldn't handle the guilt. Jake's blood went cold. Derek had been digging into his past. Amanda Harrison was asking too many questions about things that weren't her business. Derek continued. She got hurt as a result. You start asking questions, you might find yourself in a similar situation. Along with that little girl you seem to care about so much. The line went dead. Jake stared at the phone. Derek Walsh had just made two critical errors. First, he'd threatened Emma. Second, he'd reminded Jake exactly who he used to be. For 3 years, Jake had been running from his past. But Derek had just awakened something that had been sleeping. Jake opened his closet and pushed aside the janitor uniforms. In the back, wrapped in plastic, was a dark suit he hadn't worn in 3 years. He didn't need tactical gear. His hands, his mind, and his purpose were enough. The next morning, Jake walked into Harrison Dynamics wearing the dark suit. Employees passed him without recognition. After 3 years of being invisible, they simply didn't see him. But today, Jake Thompson wasn't trying to disappear. He took the elevator to the 20th floor. Amanda's assistant, Jennifer, looked up in confusion. Can I help you? I'm here about Amanda Harrison and the attack last night. She's still in the hospital. Are you with the police? I'm Jake Thompson. I provided medical care after she was attacked. Jennifer's eyes widened. Oh my goodness, you're the hero everyone's talking about. Mr. Walsh has been looking for you. He wants to thank you personally. Jake's expression didn't change. I'm sure he does. Where is he? Conference room B. He's in a meeting with some security consultants. Jake headed down the hallway, his mind sharp. Derek thought he was dealing with a broken man. He was about to discover his fatal miscalculation. Jake stepped into the conference room. Derek Walsh sat at the head of the table, surrounded by 3 men in expensive suits, posture rigid, eyes alert, hands near concealed weapons, not consultants, private military contractors. Mr. Thompson, Derek said with a practiced smile. Perfect timing. I was just discussing enhanced security measures. Jake closed the door behind him. I'm sure you were. Derek's smile faltered as he took in Jake's bearing, no longer the invisible janitor, but a man who moved like danger itself. You look different today, Derek said. I decided to stop hiding who I really am. And who is that? Derek asked, leaning back with false confidence. Captain Jake Thompson, Army Rangers. 43 confirmed saves under fire. Jake stepped forward. But you already knew that. Derek's mask slipped. Impressive record. Pity it ended in tragedy. You missed something in your research, Jake said quietly. What's that? The part where I don't let people hurt children. The room temperature seemed to drop. Derek's men tensed, sensing the shift. Now, Derek said, trying to regain control. No one wanted to hurt anyone. Amanda was getting too close. A little scare, that's all. You traumatized a 7-year-old. Collateral damage, Derek shrugged. It happens. Jake's eyes went cold. Not on my watch. Derek nodded to his men. They rose, but Jake was already moving. 3 years of hiding hadn't dulled his reflexes. The first contractor went down with a precise strike to the brachial plexus. The second drew his weapon. Jake disarmed him, reversed the grip, and struck his temple with the butt of the gun. Unconscious before he hit the floor. The third man was smarter. He lunged not at Jake, but at Derek, yanking him from his chair and pressing a gun to his temple. Back off, the contractor snarled, or I put a bullet in his head. Jake didn't hesitate. In Afghanistan, he'd faced this exact scenario a dozen times. Hostage takers always assumed their target would freeze. But Jake Thompson had spent years saving lives under fire. He wasn't here to freeze. He was here to end this. His move was fluid, a sidestep, a strike to the wrist, a twist that sent the gun clattering to the floor. The contractor collapsed, choking on his own breath. Derek stumbled back, pale with terror. You can't do this. I have connections. Protection. Not anymore. Jake pulled out his phone and dialed. Detective Morrison? Jake Thompson. Conference room B. Derek Walsh, and 3 armed men planning to eliminate witnesses. Bring backup and the FBI. You'll want them for the embezzlement trail. 20 minutes later, the room swarmed with police and federal agents. Derek sat in handcuffs as agents seized his laptop, external drives, and a burner phone filled with incriminating messages. How did you know? Morrison asked Jake. as they watched Derek being led away. He made it personal when he threatened Emma. Morrison studied him. "There's more to why you've been hiding all these years, isn't there?" Jake was quiet for a long moment. "Sometimes good people die because of choices we make. I spent 3 years running from that. But tonight I remembered something." "What's that?" "The best way to honor someone you've lost isn't to hide, it's to keep saving the people you still can." 5 days later, Amanda was discharged from the hospital. Emma hadn't left her side, and Jake had visited every day with books, flowers, and quiet company. "I still can't believe you're a war hero," Amanda said as Jake helped her into the wheelchair. "I'm just someone who finally remembered what matters." "No," Amanda said firmly. "You're someone who chose to step back into the light when you could have stayed hidden. Emma told me you've been teaching her to be brave, to help others, to see the good in people." Emma took Jake's hand. "Are you going to keep being invisible now?" Jake knelt to her level. "What do you think I should do?" "I think you should keep helping people. Like you help Mommy. Like you help those kids downtown. I think that's what heroes do." Jake's throat tightened. This 7-year-old had just handed him the purpose he'd lost 3 years ago. "You're right," he said. "That is what heroes do." 6 months later, the Thompson-Harrison Community Medical Center opened downtown, funded by Amanda. Built on Jake's vision. A place where anyone could get care, no questions asked. Emma was its brightest light, greeting patients and covering the walls with drawings of kind-eyed heroes in gray uniforms. And on a warm Saturday morning, as Jake knelt in Amanda's garden with a ring in his hand and Emma bouncing beside him, he realized that sometimes the best way to honor the past is to embrace the future. "Amanda Harrison," he said, voice full of love and hope, "will you marry me? Will you let me be part of this family?" "Yes," Amanda whispered, tears in her eyes. "Yes, absolutely yes." Emma threw her arms around them both, and Jake Thompson, war hero, healer, and finally home, knew he was exactly where he was meant to be. Sometimes the most broken people become the strongest heroes. Sometimes the greatest love stories begin with the smallest acts of courage. And sometimes a 7-year-old girl's trust in a janitor can change everything. If this incredible story of hidden heroes and unexpected love touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe for more amazing tales that prove heroes come in all forms. Drop a comment below and tell us about a time someone surprised you with their hidden strength or kindness.